Captain Janeway's depression on Star Trek Voyager was important to Kate Mulgrew's Star Trek Voyager Season 5 dealt with Captain Janeway's Kate Mulgrew depression, a storyline that was important to Mulgrew for some particular reasons. When Janeway was created as the lead for Voyager's cast of characters, she began her journey in the franchise with a lot to prove. As the first female lead of a Star Trek TV show, Janeway's character was immediately under more scrutiny than other captains before her. This also extended to Mulgrew as an actor, and even Voyager's creative team in the way they wrote and presented Janeway to the audience. Thanks to the efforts of everyone involved, however, Captain Janeway is widely considered one of the Star Trek franchise's best and most popular characters, with a legacy that continues to be important in Star Trek's modern era. Mulgrew's performance as Janeway during Voyager's run was incredible, and the creative team managed to strike the right balance of character traits. One incredibly smart move from the writers was allowing Janeway her vulnerabilities, including showing her struggles with depression and guilt during a particular episode of Voyager Season 5. Kate Mulgrew explains why Captain Janeway's depression in Star Trek Voyager Season 5 was so important in the first episode of Voyager Season 5, Night. Viewers were treated to a very different side of Captain Janeway, as the episode showed her suffering from a severe case of depression. Janeway's altered mental state caused her to shirk her responsibilities as captain, and eventually led her to almost undertake a suicide mission. The version of Janeway in Night apparently received mixed reviews, but in an interview with Star Trek The Magazine Volume 1, Issue 18 during Season 5, Kate Mulgrew explained why she liked the storyline. Read Mulgrew's full quote below. Mulgrew's words not only show how much she understood Janeway, but also how much she advocated for her character behind the scenes. Including a stark representation of Janeway's emotional struggle during Night made the character more well-rounded, and humanizing fictional characters in this way often makes them more relatable. This is especially true in a franchise like Star Trek, which could occasionally get bogged down in the science fiction aspects of its premise. Allowing Janeway her emotional vulnerabilities and shortcomings was also a smart move, even if it garnered criticism. Janeway was a more emotional character than most Star Trek captains, in a good way. In a lot of ways, Janeway was one of the most emotional captains of Star Trek's classic era. The franchise's two most famous captains before her, Captain Kirk, William Shatner, and Captain Picard, Patrick Stewart, were mainly known for being stoic and reserved. This was partially because of the time in which both characters were created, but it arguably hindered certain storytelling aspects of both Star Trek, the original series, and Star Trek, The Next Generation, making both shows as main characters a little harder to relate to on an emotional level. In contrast, Janeway was able to be the tough, no-nonsense captain, while also being a lonely, uncertain, and sometimes depressed character with a fierce love for her crew and a kindness that was on full display. This nuance is commendable because, at the time of Star Trek Voyager's airing, female characters on television were often much less well-rounded, either falling victim to becoming overly emotional or swinging too hard in the other direction. That Star Trek's creative team was able to make Janeway a three-dimensional person without becoming a stereotype helped cement the character's legacy. Captain Janeway's portrayal on Star Trek Voyager is often heralded as one of the most dynamic and multifaceted characters in the Star Trek universe. Played by Kate Mulgrew, Janeway stood out as the first female captain to lead a series, breaking new ground for the franchise and for women in science fiction. However, beyond her role as a leader and a pioneer, one of the most poignant aspects of Janeway's character was her emotional complexity, particularly her struggles with depression. This element, while often subtly explored, was crucial both to the character and to Mulgrew herself, who has spoken about the importance of portraying Janeway's depression with honesty and vulnerability. In Voyager, Captain Catherine Janeway is thrust into a nearly impossible situation. Her ship and crew are stranded 70,000 light-years from Earth in the unexplored Delta Quadrant, with little hope of returning home quickly. The weight of responsibility falls squarely on Janeway's shoulders. Not only does she have to command a starship in unknown territory, but she must also take on the role of protector, caregiver, and even surrogate family to her crew. The isolation, uncertainty, and sheer pressure of this mission would have been crushing for any leader, but especially for one who feels a deep sense of personal responsibility for her crew's well-being. Throughout Voyager, there are numerous moments where Janeway's internal struggle with her situation becomes evident. She often keeps a tight lid on her emotions, presenting a strong, composed front to her crew. However, in quieter, more intimate scenes, Mulgrew masterfully conveys Janeway's sense of isolation and guilt. These moments of vulnerability, while rare, offer a glimpse into the toll that leadership takes on her mental health. For Mulgrew, these aspects of Janeway's character were deeply significant. Mulgrew has been open about her own struggles with personal loss and depression, which she carried into her portrayal of Janeway. At the time of filming Voyager, Mulgrew was dealing with the emotional complexities of her own life, including the ongoing search for her daughter, whom she had given up for adoption years earlier. These personal experiences gave Mulgrew an intimate understanding of what it meant to wrestle with guilt, sadness, and the pressure to carry on for the sake of others. In many ways, Janeway's emotional journey mirrored Mulgrew's own, making the portrayal deeply personal and authentic. Janeway's depression was not depicted in overt or melodramatic ways, but rather through subtle storytelling and Mulgrew's nuanced performance. One of the most notable episodes that touches on Janeway's mental state is Night, Season 5, Episode 1, where the ship passes through a desolate region of space devoid of stars, planets, or life. During this time, Janeway isolates herself from her crew, withdrawing into her quarters and reflecting on the choices that led them to this situation. She grapples with feelings of guilt and self-doubt, questioning whether her decision to destroy the caretaker's array, which stranded them in the Delta Quadrant, was the right one. The episode shows Janeway at her most vulnerable, struggling with the loneliness and burden of command in a way that few episodes before had addressed so directly. For Mulgrew, the depiction of Janeway's depression was vital not just as a character trait, but as a reflection of the human experience. The pressure of leadership, especially for women in positions of power, often requires them to hide their vulnerabilities in favor of maintaining control and authority. Janeway's depression allowed Mulgrew to explore the psychological toll that such responsibility can take, especially in extreme circumstances like those depicted on Voyager. By allowing Janeway to have moments of doubt, sadness, and introspection, Mulgrew brought a depth to the character that made her more relatable and human. Furthermore, Mulgrew's portrayal of Janeway's mental health challenges was important in the broader context of Star Trek's progressive storytelling. Star Trek has always pushed boundaries, addressing social issues such as race, gender, and ethics through the lens of science fiction. By exploring Janeway's emotional struggles, Voyager continued this tradition, tackling the often stigmatized subject of mental health in a way that was both respectful and impactful. Janeway's depression was not a weakness, but a realistic response to an overwhelming situation, and Mulgrew ensured that it was portrayed with dignity and empathy. For Mulgrew, Janeway's depression also highlighted the importance of resilience. While Janeway struggled with her mental health, she never allowed it to define her or impede her ability to lead. Instead, her vulnerability became a source of strength, demonstrating that it is possible to carry the weight of responsibility while still